Today we're going to be talking about establishing a unique soccer identity. And before we start covering the topics, let me introduce you to the panel. I'm going to start from the far end. Jake Edwards, President of USL. Thank you for being here today. Darren Eels, President of Atlanta United FC. Thank you for being here. Boris Gardner, CEO of La Liga North America. Boris, gracias por venir. And Rich Orozco, VP of Marketing of LAFC. So Rich, very happy to have you here. Thank you for joining us. So the topic today is US soccer culture. And this is going to be a very, very rich conversation because we have different perspectives to talk about culture and finding a unique position within this culture. We have the domestic league perspective. We have the perspective of two clubs that in the last 3 and 2 years respectively have joined Major League Soccer. And we also have the perspective of a foreign league, La Liga, that is trying to expand its footprint in the US market. So all of you will be able to provide very valuable insights on this topic. I'm going to start with the first general question, the US soccer culture in general. And Darren, I would like to start with you. Your experience with Tottenham Hotspurs in the EPL, crossing the pond and coming to work in building a team from scratch in Atlanta United FC. From a British executive that used to play in the US, went back to Britain, worked in a club, and now came to the US. What's your perspective on the US soccer culture in general?
Yeah, I mean, it's been really interesting for me when I came back. So it's nearly 5 years ago now that I came over to America to start up Atlanta United. And I played out when it was a year before MLS was started. I played for the New York Centaurs. And I talk about it when we were trying to Americanize soccer. So the idea was it's not high scoring enough for Americans, so we've got to bring in shootouts. We'll play music while the game's going on. And the problem with that was, if you were a true soccer fan, you watched that and you thought this isn't authentic. And if you weren't a soccer fan, it didn't really appeal to you, the fact that there were shootouts. So it was neither fish nor fowl. And so for me, it was really fascinating coming back to America. And, genuinely, I was surprised with the level of soccer sophistication in this country. And I think, as we built the club, what I've been sort of almost most proud about is the MLS itself, and it doesn't matter what club, whether it's Rich and LAFC, it's what's happening in Seattle, Portland. We've managed to take that unique blend of the cosmopolitan sort of melting pot that is the United States of America and apply it to soccer. So if I talk about Atlanta United, I had in my mind what I wanted us to do from a culture perspective, to be authentic and to be part of the global landscape. But, tailgates, for example, for me that was an American football concept. But what our fans have done is they've taken that sort of college football in the South tailgate and they've turned it into their own. So the tailgates that we have before the games are incredible. We've got 3,000, 4,000, 5,000 tailgating. We took our team arrival. We have this team arrival where thousands of our fans line up an hour and a half before kickoff when the teams come. We took that from college football. So, the Atlantic, ATL, Viking chart, all of these things have gathered, and it's unique to Atlanta, unique to American soccer. So what I think we've got now is a swagger in this country. And, I'm more than happy to say, our atmosphere is better than it is in the Premier League. The Premier League has got a league of fans that are getting older and older. It's harder to get a ticket. It's older group. We have these young, dynamic fans that are taking ownership of the sport because unlike the other American sports, you are part of the show. You're not told when to stand up. It's third down, make noise. No one's telling you what to do. They own it. They make the tifos. They'll spend 2 weeks building, the big tifos to show at the game. So I do think what we're seeing is something we can be really proud of, and we shouldn't sort of be bashful or embarrassed about it. We should own it. This soccer culture is real, it's authentic, it's fun, and it's growing the game incredibly.
Yes, I agree. Jake, question for you, because while Darren sees it and lives it at the local level as president of a league, you see it from 2 different levels, right? The national level as a league or a governing body, but also you have 50 club extensions. How do you see this culture, build this culture at the national level, but obviously at the local level as well?
Yeah, I think the USL is a unique proposition because we're actually in perpetual state of creating brands. When I started at the USL in 2013, we had 10 professional clubs, and now we've become one of the largest, fastest growing soccer organizations in North America. We have 50 professional clubs now across our 2 professional divisions, the Championship and League One, and a further 80 clubs in our amateur league, our League Two. So in the space of 6 years to launch 40 professional club brands in this country is pretty amazing, and it's been a privilege to be part of that. We've learned a lot because we've had some great successes and we've had failures too. We've learned how to launch those. We've learned some best practices. And I think a couple of those that stand out would be involving the community and involving the supporters in that process. When our teams do that, they see great results. Often you're at a club and all you can see, is how you see the world, and so I think bringing in outside expertise into the process, marrying that with some local input certainly serves our club well. And I think the final point would be clubs in our league have got to think long term. You can't just come out with a cool, sexy brand and its very short-term impact. It's about who you want to be as a club. What's the long-term culture of this organization, and building a brand that then is sustainable, but also can be flexible and adapt and rebrand if needed. But thinking long term. So. It's been an interesting process, but we've seen a lot of good and bad. So, we've had some good experience in that.
Now, in the case of the two of you, the local organization like a club or the National League with local extensions, you are based here and you play a role in building this soccer culture on a day-to-day basis. Boris, the property you represent, one of the leading soccer leagues in the world, but is based 4,000 miles away. And because of this and its nature, you don't have these local connection points to build or be part, or at least as active in the building of the U.S. soccer culture. What role does La Liga see playing in building this culture?
Sure. So we definitely don't have the physical game and the physical opportunity to build a connection and a community. But actually the focus that we've given it, and honestly, where we see the big opportunity is on building communities in a digital way, if you will. And of course, it's great when you get the Spanish teams come here in the summer and play, and it's an opportunity to kind of experience that product live, but that doesn't mean that there's a huge opportunity to help build the U.S. soccer culture through La Liga, on our digital platforms, for example, through events. So I'll give you one specific example. I'm sure that if you ask 10 people here, what's your the team that you follow. Depending on where they are, they'll tell you I'm from America or Chivas or whatever it is. The second team will 95% of the time be a La Liga team. So there is already that connection, and the role that we see is how do we super serve those La Liga fans that already exist? How do we get content in front of them easier? We want to make sure that we have a La Liga branded piece of content wherever our audience is, in whatever platform it is. And that is, the way that we look at the connections. And then separately from the super fans, how can we engage the more casual fans that might not wake up every weekend to watch a La Liga game, but that know exactly what El Clásico is, or the derby, or the, Sevilla, Betis derby, you name it. There's different ways of doing it, but we try to find those unique connections and supercharge them.
You mentioned something that's very important, this balance of digital versus physical content or connections, and we'll get into that in a minute. But first, I have another question, and this one I want to start with Rich. Part of building this soccer culture and part of making it grow has a lot to do with understanding your fans and serving their needs. What you guys did with LAFC, getting ready for the start of your first season, engaging with fans, was, can you hear me? Was fantastic. What did you guys do from a club perspective to understand and serve the needs of your fans? And once you launched, which was a very, very big success, how do you keep addressing it on a constant basis? Because it's always changing, it's always evolving.
Sure. We get the question a lot, and the first obvious question is, how did you target Latinos in LA? And we actually flipped that. First of all, Darren, you were an active participant in Americanizing the global game 20 years ago when you played. Like, come on, buddy. But exactly what you talked about was you had that experience, and you brought, and with Atlanta being authentic to the global game, being of the global conversation. So we didn't target Latinos specifically. We were hyper authentic to LA. Latinos love LA. Half the city's LA. And we were hyper authentic to the global game. And we had a 3-month conversation internally about soccer versus football. Very big, small step to be authentic to the global game, so that people who love football in LA knew that we were of it and of the global conversation. And even in our match day presentation, everything we've done is an homage to a lot of global teams. So we just went pure to the property and the product and the authenticity, and the people came. Of course, we're Latino friendly and Spanish friendly with a lot of our content. But a lot of people ask us, how did you target them? And we went backwards to, let's get to the global game. We were lucky because we didn't have to teach football and football culture in Los Angeles. It was there. Our responsibility was to build the home and a new home for it.
And the results are there. Even though you were getting into a market with, 10 professional?
And 10 professional teams in LA.
Including another MLS team. So it was obviously a very unique challenge. Jake, from your vision as a league, how do you understand what your fans need at the national level, at the local level, and how do you react to serve or to satisfy those needs?
So we're a football league, of course, but we look at ourselves more along the lines of a digital content company. We're creating all this content, and we've got to distribute it to our stakeholders, our supporters, our media partners. And we invest heavily. It's the fastest growing area of our league office. We've got over 22 people just in our digital department. We have over 1,000 games that we've got to produce. We have, I think we have more content on ESPN Plus OTT platform than any other professional sports league. So we've got to overserve, and we've got to understand how our supporters consume that content, and we've got to deliver that. So that's something we're totally focused on. We also need to understand the human element and why people go to support their local clubs and what that relationship looks like at a human level. And we're in a great position in our league, given our size and scale, given the mid-sized to small markets that we're in, as well as some of the larger markets, that we're able or afforded that opportunity. We're averaging a little over 6,000 fans a game. So that's a good number, but it's not an enormous number. And what that affords our clubs is the ability for the club president or the team owner or the front office over the course of a couple of seasons to potentially meet every single one of their supporters. And that's amazing. Darren, who is a super friendly guy, is very personable. He's a good friend. He's not going to be able to meet 70,000 people that come to his games each week. He's not going to be able to shake their hands. If he spends too much time, his wife will kill him. He's not able to do that. So maybe there's a bit more reliance on the data and the digital side in some of those bigger clubs. But for our clubs to be able to have that relationship is pretty special. Not long ago, I was in El Paso this year, and it's a team we have in El Paso, and they had this awful tragedy inflicted on the community with a mass shooting. And the next home game, which was 2 weekends later, I went, some of our league office went, and we weren't sure what to expect. We weren't sure how this community is going to react. Are they going to be comfortable to get back in a public building, in a big gathering space? But we knew they had a very good relationship with the club, a very personal relationship with the club. And we went to the supporters bar before the match, as I said, some of the league staff and some of the club staff. And there's a few hundred people in the supporters bar, and we had a few beers, and we talked about their emotions, their relationship to the club, and how this game and this club were going to affect the healing process and begin the healing process of that community. And they were going to do that through this club and through this next match. So it's quite an emotional day all around. And we marched to the stadium with these supporters. We spent time with them. We got to know them. And it struck me that was a big moment for the club, a big moment for those supporters. And it was a good example of how a relationship and those interpersonal relationships can help people and can help communities and can help football clubs. And there were 7,000 people came out for that game to watch it. So I always say that, yes, we're investing heavily in digital. We have to understand our fan base. We need to have all the analytical data, etc. But at least in our case, a handshake and looking somebody in the eye and a conversation is far more powerful for long-term commitment and affinity to a club than tagging someone in a tweet or a targeted marketing campaign based on some data profile.
So there has to be a balance, no? That's what I'm hearing. There has to be a balance between digital/media interactions on connection points, but at the same time, you need the physical interactions. You need a handshake, maybe as a metaphor, but you need to have the handshake. Darren, at the club level, how do you guys manage this balance, and how do you work with your fans, obviously in the physical experience, which is one of the best, not only in the US, but in the world? I think the club is in the top 15 in the world in terms of attendance, which is amazing. But also, how do you balance that with the social connection points and social interaction, or digital connection points and interactions?
Yeah, I mean, it's been an interesting one. I mean, as we grew the club, so similar to what Rich was saying with LAFC, who did a fantastic job. It was amazing seeing their launch and the way that they've just energized their city with the team. So when we were starting up, I mean, we joke and we say we were going to call our book Pub Crawl Your Way to Success, because literally what we tried to do was meet our fans. Early on, we had about 5,000 that signed up with a season ticket deposit 3 years before we were going to kick a ball. So we knew we had this sort of fervent fan base that was already starting. And so what we did was we tried to create that human connection that Jake's talking about. So that might be Premier League viewing parties on a Saturday morning, US or Mexican national team viewing parties, the parades in Atlanta, which is a big thing in the summer, having a presence there. So you're meeting with them. But what we were finding is we were creating a movement, because those younger supporters were at those events. They were sharing it digitally, so they were our micro ambassadors in effect. So as we built Atlanta United, and it's part of the reason we're just about to reach 1 million on Twitter, is because we started by using digital as a powerful tool as we tried to create a movement and this feeling of, you're part of something bigger than just a sporting club. And so I think that was really effective for us. But I do think it's really important that you don't lose that human touch, and Jake mentioned it. So before every game, the tailgates that I spoke about, I'll go to the tailgate before every game. Now, I can't meet everybody and shake everyone's hand, but it's a symbol, and it's showing that just because the fan base is 50,000 plus, we haven't lost that sort of feeling that you're connected to the club. And I think it's really important that we demonstrate that to the fans, because the moment you just think, all right, that's it, we've done our job here, we've got the fan base, is the moment you're going to lose them. So it's really important that you always focus and put number one, that relationship with your supporters.
Boris, how do you find ways to build this connection or this relationship when the core of your product is overseas?
Let me take a slightly different approach. The way we think about the fans of La Liga and the specific clubs is, of course, the people that go to the stadium that have the season tickets are the core of the teams and of La Liga. But the guys that are buying here a monthly cable subscription to watch La Liga and that wake up at 7 a.m. to watch the match are as valuable as the guys that are going to the stadium. So it depending on who you ask, it could get a little bit controversial, and we can go on and on and on for hours. But at the end of the day, the fan base that's growing, that attachment to the teams and to the competition, comes not only from the people that are going to the stadium, but everyone in the world that's interacting with the product. And so that is watching the broadcast or interacting with the content that we push on our digital platforms, attending the games when the teams go for summer tours. So that's something that is very important for us. We want to make sure that as many people as possible can watch the matches on their TV or wherever they are consuming content. And so kind of complementary to that, and not to get into a separate conversation. That's why we feel that having a league match in the US specifically is so important.
Understood, and a very controversial topic.
Yep.
Sure. These connections can be translated into one basic idea or concept, which is grassroots, right? And grassroots is a very valuable vehicle and a very valuable avenue for brands, in this case a club, for example, to connect with consumers or potential consumers. Rich, what you guys did in LA with this block by block, street by street strategy was fantastic. Again, you came into a market that had 10 professional sports teams, another MLS team that had been established since the day one of the league. So obviously, at least on paper and before it started, it looked like an uphill battle.
Yep.
Tell us a little bit about the role grassroots played in building LAFC as we know it today.
So I'll echo what Darren said, that we just talked backstage about the pub crawl. Amazing. And, you know, if a lot of people ask us how it happened, ask all of us. And grassroots is not a marketing campaign. Grassroots, if you have one person at your club doing grassroots, that's not enough. If you have one person developing supporters, that's not enough. And what we were talking about is, once I meet Darren at an event, I need to meet his staff as a supporter, so I trust the people at the club. So what we were very careful about was all of us are hands-on, all of us roll our sleeves up from ownership down to the new hires, and people have to see a group of people with the same vision and commitment and fire in order to follow and in order to tell your friends. And for us, the events, what made us scalable was content. So we had a great talk, me and Boris, about heavy content. I love listening to his approach with La Liga as he makes it personalized to people as they can consume. But we had events and we put content on top, and we had events and content on top. It was much more impactful to shoot a video of me and you speaking about football and a vision in LA and to put that on our digital channels than it was to pretend we had a room of 500 when we didn't.
Yeah.
So that's why if you look at our social media bio, we haven't changed for 2 years. It is it's not just a campaign, it's our approach. It's a street by street, block by block, one by one, but it's energizing. We're not looking in the past, we're looking in the future. And the second part of our bio and all our social media is the heart of Los Angeles. We believe anybody who walks in our stadium, whether you're an LFC fan or not, you are part of the heart of Los Angeles. So we have a very clear identity, and we have a roll up your sleeves commitment. Mm-hmm. And for us, phase 2 now, we have new staff. There's more people than the 5 of us who started it, so to speak, and it's really important for the new people to get how we got there, but they bring the new energy and continue that approach.
So it's, in a way, you can say that content and media in general can give you awareness, but grassroots and that connection gives you loyalty.
Yep, you need to connect it.
Jake, at the league experience, at the league perspective, any cases of your teams being more aggressive on the grassroots scene and seeing results in the local markets? I mean, what are some of the best practices you can share from the league perspective?
Yeah, I think as Rich was saying, you know, a lot of our teams that have been very successful in this have had enough time to launch and enough time to spend in the market before they actually even begin the branding process. And they get to understand where do people consume football, who are the supporters that are already there, who are going to be the key influencers and the champions of this, and get them on board, get them bought in, and really make it feel like it's their club and they're sharing in the building of the club, and like you said, meeting the staff and getting to trust people. So I think the clubs that do that give themselves a really good chance. I think as we approach this from the USL, it's been our philosophy, though, that the clubs are the very best reflections of their community. They should understand their community far better than we should at the league office based in Tampa. How they engage with their community in San Antonio or Louisville or Las Vegas or Madison is not for us to say. It's not for us to police, control. We have our responsibilities from the league office, but what I've been so pleased to see is that each of those almost 50 professional clubs have gone at it in a different way. And so I don't think there's one overarching sort of soccer culture or fan culture. I think it's quite unique in each market. How an MLS fan consumes and relates to his or her club may well be different for a USL fan. We are very hyper-local. And so when I see things in Madison, Wisconsin, for example, this is a League One team who said, we're going to be called Forward Madison, and a flamingo is going to be our logo. And we're sitting here, that's different, I'm not sure about that, but we reserve judgment and we'll see how they get on with it. And on the opening day of this season, when it was snow, and they were shoveling snow off the field, there was like 5,000 people with blow-up flamingos and drinking beer and painted flamingos, costumes. you think, what's going on here? You know, this is kind of, but that's their thing. And that's unique to them. And Las Vegas, very different. We have a very neon football kit, very flamboyant. We've got an owner who's really pushing the boundary of entertainment, what you should and shouldn't do. We've got llamas in the stadium. We have Elvis on motorbikes. He's dropping things out of helicopters. And you're sitting there in the league office thinking, you know, it's kind of, you know, my competition guy has a heart attack every time they play because he's, you know, and they're getting fines on Monday. But he... it's working for that community, and he's got 10,000 maniacs coming to they're having a great time, you know. And so I think we've taken that approach that the clubs should work that out themselves and reflect that community and what do they want out of that experience.
So the lesson there is it has to be relevant for it to be successful. It has to be relevant to the market. It has to be relevant to the environment, to the local culture, instead of being just a cookie-cutter approach in which you try to do everything the same way everywhere. No? So finding this unique position, understanding your fan needs, developing this identity, at the end of the day, it has one ultimate goal, which is delivering value. Delivering value, first of all, to your fans, obviously, no? Delivering value to your ownership, either league or club, and delivering value to your partners, sponsors, licensees, broadcast partners. How do you translate, and I'll start with you, Darren, how do you translate all this effort and all these ideas and initiatives to build an identity? You succeed in building this identity. How does that translate into value?
Well, look, I mean, I think, you know, for ourselves, as a point in case, it's been really interesting with our sponsors. We've got a great group of sponsors that a lot of them signed on before Atlanta United was even in existence. And I think what's been really important as we've grown the club is we've kept that dialogue so that, yes, we've got this contract in a drawer that says you're going to deliver on certain sort of assets, but actually we have a conversation, we say, look, that doesn't really work for us where we are now. So a good example, Coca-Cola, obviously based in Atlanta, really incredibly helpful to us. When we did our name launch, they did special cans at the last minute, but those sort of things really resonated with our fan base and with the city of Atlanta. Fast forward, we're then showing a game on Fox that's going to be after the Women's World Cup. So Coke, with their help, went to FIFA, and we did a big viewing party. We had over 30,000 come into the building before our match that we ended up getting 70,000 for our game, coming early to watch the Women's World Cup. So that was a great example of delivering something valuable to our partner through dialogue. And it wasn't in the contract, but it was that idea, no different from your relationship with the supporters, about how can we do things that are beneficial, mutually beneficial, and growing basically the pot for everybody. So that's the way we try to approach it with our partners.
Boris, the same question for you. You are CEO of La Liga North America. Obviously, you have a P&L responsibility, and La Liga and Relevant are doing significant investments in supporting efforts and in the market to establish this identity. How do all these initiatives and these efforts translate into value for La Liga in the medium or long term?
Sure, and actually, I'll add another stakeholder to that, and it's the clubs.
Correct.
Right? At the end of the day, the purpose of La Liga is how do we build and create value that can go back to the clubs. So that's the first thing. For the clubs, we're offering them true knowledge of the market. There's a bunch of clubs that would love to have a US strategy, but either they don't have the bandwidth, the resources, or honestly, the knowledge to commit in long term here to the market to build that. So they see that, you know, La Liga taking on that effort with Relevant as a local partner. We're creating and doing all of the hard work to understand really what's the landscape for soccer and for La Liga in the US. And we constantly go back to them and we meet with the presidents of almost all the teams just to share what we're learning, and some of them are piggybacking on our strategy in the US to just help grow their brand. There's some others that are not interested in the US market for many reasons, or they're just focused on the domestic market, so that's fine. So that's kind of the first value that we give back, is just that knowledge of the market and building the bridges to facilitate their internationalization, if you will. The second piece, and it ties back to to your point of the P&L responsibility that we have as a business, but again, also going back to the clubs. Our theory is very simple. We cannot expect as a league to come to the market every 4 years to negotiate a new TV rights deal, get an increase and leave and then pop in, right? So what we're doing in the investments that we're making and in aiding to grow the brand here is making sure that every time we enter into those conversations, we're not strangers. We've been here, we're building, we're collaborating with the broadcaster, and so when we sit down again, the conversation is completely different. Mm-hmm. That's the primary theory on what we're doing. And then the third one, La Liga has a strong brand. It has a following in the US. There's a ton of work that we need to do to further grow it. But in the conversations that we've been having with partners, making La Liga more accessible to them, explaining why the audience that we get with La Liga is different from what the domestic offerings can have, and there's a bunch of different elements to that, but we build a vehicle for partners to jump in with us and trying to jointly grow La Liga and the partners brand in the market. So we're creating local assets. So sure, I can still go out and sell you LED and the media side of it, and that's available and it's great. But specifically on the content side, we're creating 9 weekly digital shows that we're pushing out in English and in Spanish, depending on the sub demo that we want to target. And not only that helps us grow the audience, but it helps us turn around to a partner and say, here's a local way to integrating with La Liga and growing together. So it doesn't feel foreign. There's a bunch of leagues and clubs that, I think understand the value of the US market. They take out a WeWork and Park Avenue, put out a press release saying that they have a US presence, and they assume that brands will line up because they are X, Y, and Z. Couldn't be farther from reality. You even started with the level of competitiveness that the LA market has. So just take that to the league level. If someone is trying to break through the US market and is not willing to invest and commit in the long run, it's going to be really tough.
Yeah, it's a market that's fragmented not only at the soccer level, but at overall sports level in general. One last question, and I'm going to go back to the first topic I mentioned, which is US soccer culture. Now let's put our future caps. July 30th, 2026. How did the US soccer culture change after hosting the FIFA World Cup with Mexico and Canada? And by the way, this question is for each of you. And how will your organizations, club, league, will prepare for that day in July 2026? Rich?
We might have to double the size of our stadium after the World Cup. That's kidding. What I would be excited about, if you've been to an LAFC match, a lot of the fire is that there are people in that stadium who are having their very first experience with supporter culture and the flags and the people and that fire. So what we hope, after 2026, after those games, you're going to have that many more of the casual fans in Los Angeles who realize they have a couple options to stay involved with the sport and with the culture. So none of us can lose with this one.
Boris, how does hosting the 2026 World Cup in the US impact, well, the US, Mexico, and Canada, because you oversee North America, obviously. How does hosting this World Cup in the 3 countries impact your potential business opportunities in the region?
So soccer here in the region is a growing industry. I think that the more than anyone can come in and do to help it grow is going to be beneficial for all of us. The World Cup is the event on soccer globally, so definitely having it here, getting more of the casual fans in front of the product, definitely helps probably cut through the noise, going back to the competitiveness of the market. And if there's 10% more people that are now aware that soccer is, the passion and the drama that we all see and that they're interested in, if that means more people going to the LAFC games or more supporters for Atlanta United, whatever it is, there's more people in our pie. So we just need to make sure that we're growing it together. I don't think, that we are competing with the domestic league or with the clubs. Again, we just need to all be pushing forward to grow this, and 2026 is going to be the definitely a catalyst for that growth.
Aaron, what do you think?
Yeah, look, I mean, build off what Rich said, just can't wait till 2026. You think about it, the US 94 World Cup is still the most attended World Cup.
Yes.
There's no MLS at that stage. It'll be the 30th anniversary of Major League Soccer when we have the World Cup in 2026. So I don't think we understand because we're in the soccer world, I don't think people in North America realize what's going to hit them when the World Cup comes in 2026. And for us, it's an unbelievable chance for us to grow the pie, as Boris says, to get that casual fan that's just perhaps a sports fan on the peripheral to see how amazing a World Cup is in their own backyard. It's going to be fantastic.
Jake, from the league perspective, I think that the two entities that will benefit the most of these will be obviously the two domestic leagues, MLS and USL. What do you think happens after July 2026?
I think, first of all, last time the World Cup was here in '94, England didn't qualify, I'm told. So as long as we qualify, that will be an improvement. That will be the first thing. From our point of view, I think what's going to happen when that amazing roadshow comes to town and then leaves, it's going to be sort of fairly obvious in the big markets where the games are played. You don't really have to stimulate the love of football or the legacy. It's there in those big cities. For us personally, we're in a lot of those sort of mid-major and smaller markets. I would love to see the impact of that World Cup affect those communities as well, and have the fans in those communities also be touched by it. And they'll obviously be watching on TV, and many will be able to go to the games. But our legacy, and something we're working hard on now, which will be a dramatic game changer for us, is our facilities and our venues. We open next season what will be a showpiece stadium in Louisville, and you'll have 15,000 fans in there. And between now and the World Cup in '26, if we can replicate that and build a lot more of those kind of cathedrals of those fans in those communities where they go and consume the local football, that will be a great legacy. And I think the World Cup, as we're looking at all the initiatives such as stadium building, the World Cup is a great guidepost to get there and try and achieve all of these kind of goals.
Agreed. I think we have a couple of minutes for questions from the audience. I don't know if anyone has a question. I see a hand rising over there.
Hi, how are you? Is it on? Yeah. Hello? No? Hello. So my question is about, I think both LAFC and Atlanta United have done a great job in engaging the communities and growing their fan base. I've heard this morning the MLS commissioner and you guys have talked a lot about that, right? Growing that and your new league and new teams. If you see in Latin America and Europe, not only that's important, but also winning, right? And that's a word that I haven't heard, right? So Real Madrid, Barcelona, United, and Arsenals of this world are also growing, and they're getting more and more partners commercially because they also. Do you hear anything that I said?
Yeah.
Yes.
Because they also win, right? And if you go to what's happening in a couple of days, River and Flamengo are growing because they win international. When do you think that's going to be the stage in the U.S. soccer that it's going to be important to win and win in the CONCACAF champions, and hopefully one day you participate in the Libertadores as well, and so on?
I think it's now.
Yeah, look,
Trophies.
when we were building the club, we sort of set the goal to be competitive from the start. But obviously that's a bit of a moving feast, and Rich knows that with LAFC as well. So first year we got to the playoffs. I think that was important for us as a new team to be the first for 10 years as an expansion team to do that. Of course, the second year we won it, so I think that set the bar quite high. But I think, look, you've got to have that competitive product. I do think, though, when you look at America, and it goes back to sport engagement, I think it's about being competitive and showing the fans that you're doing all you can to have a team that's competing and trying its best. And you're not always going to win. You know, you can have a game. We lost to Toronto in the playoffs, and credit to them, they had a game plan. They scored 2 world-class goals, and that's why we love the game of football. You know, it's those sort of upsets that make the game what we love. But I think it's about showing that you can put a team out there that consistently is going to be competitive, and there'll be the highs and lows. But look, I do think we can't ever ignore that. The reality is we're in the competitive environment. Football's about what happens on the grass, and so you've got to be able to at least back up what you're doing with a team that's looking to compete.
I'll add to that. You know, I think, you know, fans are smart. They get it when you buy young players. You know, MLS is often now becoming the bridge to Europe. So, but none of us here could affect wins and losses, and I think the fire that we brought to all of our clubs and organizations is, I think we're just passionate about the culture and growing the game. And as long as the organization has integrity on the operation side about trying to win and putting the best foot forward, you know, again, fans get it, and they could see it, and they can smell the difference. And then, of course, you know, the trophies obviously help, but none of us can. We didn't do what we did, knowing that we could affect anything on the field, and we wanted to create a community and a culture that would be bulletproof for wins and losses, and obviously wins help.
Yep. We have time for one more question. There's a question there. Yeah.
At what point do you think that MLS will be interested in cultivating a fan base outside the community? Obviously, LAFC, I live in Los Angeles, so I've had the full experience of that. Still building within the community, is there a point where MLS teams feel that they have sufficient participation, involvement of their local community that they can then expand outside in the same way that La Liga, Bundesliga, Premier are coming to the U.S.?
Well, look, that's a great question. I think we're doing it both locally and globally. And you know, Jorge Mas gave a great presentation earlier today where they're looking at Inter Miami to do that. I think you have to focus locally because that's the difference we've got. So you know, Boris is coming in, but we actually have games that are going on in this country. So you've got the ability to go to that match at Atlanta United, be an Atlanta United fan and watch the game, and then you can be a Barcelona or a Real Madrid fan and consume it through the TV. But I think we have to be focused on local because that's our point of differential as we grow the game in this country. And clearly we've got a ways to go in terms of media rights, you know, compared to my former league Premier League, where a Bournemouth might have 10%, you know, of their profits is coming from outside of media rights. You know, they've got the ability because of the big TV deals. So I think you've got to be focused on local, but we're all trying to grow the game globally as well. And I think, you know, we're seeing that with, you know, certainly on my travels now, when I go to Europe, people know about LAFC, they know about Atlanta United, they know about Major League Soccer because we're on the TV and we're in over 170 countries. But I think, you know, we've got to be careful and not put the cart before the horse. We've got to get it right in North America, and there's plenty of time for us to dominate the world later on.
Yeah, I think we have many years to hug Los Angeles and, you know, Atlanta, many, many, many more years. Our content makes that scalable and gets the international world interested. And I'm sure one day me and Darren will high five when we're doing our first ever international tour. But I think there's a lot of work to do here still.
You're invited to Spain.
There we go, right here. It happened right here.
Well, thank you, Jake, Darren, Boris, Rich. Thank you so much for your time today. It was a very, very interesting conversation. And thank you, everyone, for being here. So thank you.
Thank you.